Joining me now, Katie Phang, MSNBC legal contributor and host of the Katie Phang Show that immediately preceded this one. So thank you for the OT, my friend. And Leah Littman, co-host of the Strict Scrutiny podcast and professor of law at the University of Michigan Law School. Good to see you again, Leah. So I'll start with you, Leah, because first on this obstruction charges decision, unlike the other cases that were decided yesterday along ideological lines, liberal Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson sided with the majority, and then conservative Justice Amy Coney Barrett with the minority. So spell out this decision and how it could impact the January 6th rioters going forward.
So what the decision did is it narrowed the interpretation of one of the statutes that many of the January 6 defendants have been charged with, obstructing an official proceeding. And what the 6 justices said in the majority is, in order to obtain a conviction under that statute, prosecutors had to show that the defendants obstructed a proceeding in a way that affected the availability of documents, evidence, or records, because this statute was passed in the wake of Enron, and that was basically Congress's purpose and design in enacting the statute. So that decision could be significant for Donald Trump's case because 2 of the 4 charges that special counsel Jack Smith brought in the election interference case against Donald Trump were based on this statute. And so I think the most significant side of this ruling to Donald Trump's case is that it could add some additional delay because it's going to require the prosecutors to add in some additional proof and prove some additional elements in order to obtain a conviction in this case. And given that the Supreme Court has already delayed the possibility of an election interference trial, that additional delay could prove quite significant.
Okay, so Katie, when you have 2 of the 4 criminal charges Donald Trump faces in the January 6th case that deal with obstruction, what are the possible implications specifically for Donald Trump's prosecution now?
Yeah, Alex, it's a great question. And, you know, here's the indictment that you're speaking about. Count 2 is conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, and count 3 is obstruction of an attempt to obstruct a official proceeding. That's exactly the statute that was at issue in the Fisher case. But the good news is for special counsel Jack Smith, as Leah just explained, you can actually continue as Jack Smith traveling under this particular federal statute because the ruling that came from Fisher yesterday did not destroy the case against Donald Trump. In fact, the decision yesterday bolstered the idea that Donald Trump conspiring to obstruct the counting or the certification, of the electoral votes by the submission of fake electors, fake elector ballots or fake electors is a part of that case. And so the bottom line is, the government was told by the Supreme Court it overreached in terms of the breadth of the statute and how it wanted to apply. Fisher wanted a very narrow reading. A lot of people think that this is going to impact a lot of defendants, but it's actually a really small subset of defendants that are being prosecuted right now by the DOJ. And so when it comes to Donald Trump's case, the indictment still stands, and special counsel Jack Smith is on pretty decent ground, even considering this ruling that came from the Supreme Court yesterday.
Did anything, Leah, in the obstruction decision or the other decisions this week hint how the court will rule Monday on Trump's claims of presidential immunity?
I'm not sure we can read much into any of the decisions thus far as to how they are going to rule on Donald Trump's immunity claim. In some ways, the most significant signal we've gotten was the dissent in the Colorado disqualification case, where the 3 Democratic appointees on the court, Justices Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson, basically accused the Republican majority of being in the bag for Donald Trump, given how they wrote the opinion in that case. And so that could perhaps be the best signal about what is going to happen in Donald Trump's immunity case. Now, I don't think the court is going to embrace Donald Trump's full version of immunity because that's absurd. But I think what is likely is they could send the case back down to the trial court to make some additional findings, which will give Donald Trump some additional delay that he really wants in order to postpone this trial until after the election.
So Jack Smith's election interference trial against Donald Trump, that was set to begin on March 4th, but that's been delayed for months while the Supreme Court considers the immunity question, Leah. Why would the court release this ruling on the very last day of the term?
I mean, we don't know the exact reason. Of course, this case was argued on the very last day of the Supreme Court's term. So on one hand, it's not exactly surprising that it would end up being among the final decisions. But I do think it's concerning that the Supreme Court is taking much longer to decide this case than it did, for example, in the Colorado disqualification case. It's taken roughly twice as long in order to, the time between granting the case and deciding the case as it did in the Colorado disqualification case. And that doesn't even add on the time that the Supreme Court added by not taking up Jack Smith's request to hear the case back in December. And so I think there are really serious questions about whether the court is potentially, or whether some of the justices potentially are dragging their feet in order to prolong the proceedings in this case and again delay the possibility of a pre-election trial or a pre-election verdict.
So the Supreme Court certainly has multiple ways that it could rule on immunity, Katie. What are the different ways it could play out?
I agree with Leah. You're not going to see a wholesale agreement by SCOTUS as to Trump's position of absolute criminal immunity. What you're going to see, if the oral arguments are any type of indicator, you're going to see a ruling of a reverse and remand, meaning they're going to kick it back to Judge Chutkan at the district court level. And I believe, as do others, that Judge Chutkan will then be told that she needs to make a determination as to what conduct that's alleged in the indictment is, quote, official acts as president, what conduct is, quote, unofficial acts. The unofficial acts do not get the immunity that I think the Supreme Court is going to give to presidents through the course of their conduct as presidents. And I'm a believer, and I've been pushing this idea that you're going to see an evidentiary hearing that Judge Chutkan will do. And I think very quickly, I think she's going to put the pedal to the metal in this. And the evidentiary hearing will be an opportunity for special counsel Jack Smith to present the entirety of the indictment, because I believe that the indictment against Donald Trump is all unofficial acts. None of that conduct was kosher. None of it was supposed to happen. It was all illegal. But you'll see special counsel Jack Smith put on what I'm going to call a mini trial through the course of an evidentiary hearing, so Americans can hear what Donald Trump did. It'll basically be that federal election interference case in D.C. put on trial, but not in front of a jury. And that actually will end up being appealed, I am confident, by Donald Trump. But at least before November, Americans will hear the conduct of Donald Trump.
And you agree there's no chance this will go to trial or even start, so that he would necessarily be in trial, Katie, 2 weeks before the election?
I mean, we can noodle the numbers a little bit. There was a kind of a short window of time that was left before the case went up on appeal to the appellate court and then to SCOTUS. But I don't think you're going to see that happen. There's still some motions that need to be dealt with. And I do think that at this point, Chutkan could try. But I think based upon what she rules on what's official and not official, I think you're going to see an appeal of that, even though interlocutory appeals are not, given freely in any capacity, really, in criminal cases.
So yesterday afternoon, the Supreme Court rejected Trump ally Steve Bannon's effort to avoid his 4-month sentence for defying subpoenas from the House January 6th committee. He will report to prison on Monday. The court offered no explanation. But what do you think their justification was, Katie?
I mean, the jury rendered its verdict. I mean, it's been challenged, this idea that Bannon, was given actually by his trial judge this opportunity to appeal what was going on. And the Supreme Court said, you know what, you're going to go to prison. A jury heard your case and a jury, rendered its verdict, and the judge gave you your sentence. And so tough, Steve Bannon, you're being treated like any other defendant that's in our criminal justice system. And they didn't find any grounds as the Supreme Court to be able to give him a reprieve. And so that's exactly why Steve Bannon's reporting on Monday.
As I mentioned earlier, the court overturned this week the 1984 Chevron precedent, which weakens the power of federal agencies to approve regulations, Leah. How big of an impact could this ruling have on Americans in their everyday lives?
It's extremely significant. I think this decision fundamentally reallocates power among, the different branches of federal government, because whereas before you had expert administrative agencies like the Environmental Protection Agency or the Securities and Exchange Commission deciding how to regulate financial markets or deciding how to achieve clean air or clean water, or you had expert agencies like the FAA deciding how to make transportation safe. Now those same questions are going to be resolved by federal courts who aren't as expert, aren't as accountable to the people, and now are staffed by a majority of Republican justices on the Supreme Court who are very skeptical of regulation and very receptive to deregulation. And so I think this decision is going to mark a dramatic sea change in how Americans, most of their everyday lives interface with government.
All right, I want to thank you both. But Leah, can I just say, I've been laughing at the T-shirt you're wearing. I hope it is not prescient of what you think is going to happen on Monday. Time for some bad decisions. I'm like, oh, no, that's not good.
It's a specific reference to the Chevron decision, but also a warning of what may come on Monday.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that. I thank you for your time. And, of course, Katie, as always, I thank you.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.